What makes a Souls-like game? Have you ever asked that question for yourself? Is it the scriptic environmental storytelling, the difficulty levels? I think people know by now, but Myth Wukong is not a Souls-like. It is an action RPG with Souls-like aspects. Shrines serve the same function as bonfires. They replenish your health and mana, restock your healing guard, and respawn enemies upon dying. You will lose a portion of your XP and be transported to the last shrine you visited. This is pretty much all the game has in common with the Souls games. The rest of the gameplay aspects are much more in line with something like God of War. However, I'm still going to make a lot of comparisons to From Software games simply because I hold them as the gold standard when it comes to action combat games. So please keep this in mind going forward. About 80% of the time you spend in Myth Wukong is going to be in combat. It is therefore absolutely essential that the combat and the systems around it are rock solid. So what do I think about the combat? Well, to put it simply, I think it's exceptional. Throughout my entire playthrough, I did not once tire off the combat. In fact, even after completing the game, I still found myself wanting to go back in for more. I truly have not had this much fun with the game in a long time. So that says something. So what makes the combat so great? Well, firstly, they have nailed all the basics that make a good combat system. Controls are responsive and initiative, hits carry weight and are impactful, movement and animations are fluid, and the hitboxes are precise. Although this seems basic, it cannot be said for a lot of combat focused games outside from the strong foundation. Another aspect that makes Myth Wukong's combat stand out from the rest is the amount of build diversity the game facilitates and encourages. A ridiculous critique I saw from a few reviews was the simplicity of the combat, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. It is not the game's fault if you choose to play the game one specific way, as the variety and options are definitely there. Let me give you a breakdown of the combat system so that you can decide for yourself whether it is basic or not. Myth Wukong's combat system consists of three main components: melee attacks, spells, and transformations. Melee attacks are performed with your staff. With your staff, you can perform light attacks, heavy attacks, and varied combos, heavy attacks. And the varied combos required focus points to perform and will change depending on which stance you use. There are a total of 4 stances in the game. Smash stance, which allows you to deal the most damage and charge your heavy attacks, while moving P stance, which allows you to elevate yourself above enemies as well as deal damage to a wide area. Thrust stance, which allows you to counterattack and attack from a great distance. And finally, Wukong stance, which is unlocked by retrieving the Monkey King's staff at the end of the game. This is by far the most powerful stance, and it allows for devastating levels of damage, but it is sadly limited to the last chapter in terms of spells. There are 6 in the main game, with the 7th one being unlocked in New Game Plus. Spells, as you would expect, consume mana, but aren't anything like what you would find in any other games. They are all extremely powerful, and each of them significantly change the way you play. Entire bows can be crafted around a single spell as well. Immobilize stops the enemy in place, allowing you to attack them for increased damage. Ring of Fire creates a healing circle around you, which is my favorite, which restores your health and applies additional buffs. Cloud Step creates a decoy that distracts the enemy while your body becomes concealed rock solid, allows you to parry incoming attacks, and Plug of Many creates several duplicates of yourself that will change and attack the enemy. Life-Saving Strand allows you to cheat death, resurrecting you once your HP reaches 0. Finally, Spellbind locks all other spells significantly, increasing your attack and critical hits by defeating bosses and strong enemies. You will sometimes be able to take and assume their form in future battles. There are 10 complete transformations where you take the form of a formidable foe for a substantial duration, and the 54 spirit transformations where you take the form of a slightly less formidable foe for a few seconds or so. Full transformations completely change your aim set to that of the enemy you have moored into and require. It might be to be performed, which takes a long time to generate spirit. Transformations, on the other hand, allow you to quickly execute a certain skill or attack and consume ki, which recharges relatively fast now. These three components on their own are already great, but what makes the combat system really shine is the synergy between the components. Players are able to mix and match spells, transformations, and stances to create some seriously powerful combinations. Some of my favorites include Ring of Fire Plus, Cloud Step, and then Plug of many, followed by Immobilize. There are many pairings that work well together, and the best part is that you are able to freely experiment with them thanks to how the skill tree works. Now, the skill tree itself is fairly straightforward. There are sections to upgrade your base stats, foundational skills, staff stances, spells, and transformations. But what's great about Black Myth Wukong is that you can reallocate your stats at any point without any cost. This is something so simple but makes a world of a difference. And I wish a lot more games would implement this. Having the freedom to explore different skills helps to keep the combat fresh and removes the fear of committing to a skill tree, and that turns out to be bad. Another aspect that significantly contributes to your build variety is your gear or equipment, and there is a seriously a lot here. So bear with me, okay? You have your weapons and armor sets, which contain unique effects and set bonuses, curious, which are accessories with distinct properties, vessels, which have both passive and active benefits. GS drinks and soaks, which apply different effects upon healing, and lastly, relics, which gives you the choice of three different buffs. You can surely imagine all the possible combinations of your gear that will ultimately influence your playstyle. There is an influx of people on YouTube coming up with all sorts of crazy bows and trying to min-max it as much as possible. But one thing I will say is that the developers did a fucking great job of balancing the gear and skills, making a lot different playstyles feel viable. Oh, I personally had a lot of fun running a grip bolt as well as a thunderbolt, I must say. I want to highlight and praise the healing system in this game, as it's a great example of how they were able to take a concept from a Souls game and improve on it. In Black Myth Wukong, instead of just one type of rechargeable healing, you have a multitude of different healing GS, each with their own effects. Then you have drinks that you can fold your CS up with that apply even more buffs. And finally, you have soaks that you can put inside your drinks that grant even more bonuses. This adds multiple by layers of complexity to the healing system, which allows you to prioritize other attributes aside from your health. Depending on your own personal need, I would have liked to see this level of creativity and innovation applied to other systems in the game, specifically the root and gear progression system. Now, these systems are by no means bad, but they are not up to par with the other aspects of the game. While exploring the world of Black Myth Wukong, you will rarely find any weapons or armors. Instead, you will find materials that allow you to craft these pieces of equipment. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I personally think it would be more rewarding and exciting to come across a rare piece of gear after discovering a secret location rather than a crafting component. I think the armor and weapons themselves are great. They each have substantially different properties and bonuses, which will directly influence your style of play. What I don't like is the upgrade system for the weapons. With the armors, you can upgrade each set multiple times, allowing you to keep on using the ones you enjoy. However, the upgrade system for the weapons is a bit different. Each unique weapon has an upgrade tree that drastically upgrades and changes the properties of a weapon. The problem is that each time you craft a weapon in that tree, you lose the previous weapon. Now you are all able to recraft a previous weapon iteration of a weapon again. However, you are only refunded some of the crafting components, which makes swapping between endgame weapons extremely costly, and not only viable. This somewhat hinders the freedom I previously praised the game for, and it could be have easily been fixed by allowing us to keep all previous crafted weapons, or by providing a full refund when crafting a new weapon anyway. This is not a massive issue, and just an area I think they could have approved and can approve in the future.
Darling, come on! It's perfectly cool in here. Join me inside. We'll have some dance practice with you.
Such humour, Admiral. Let go of your stubbornness and I could request Master to set you free. Then I'd be open to joining you.
Now let's move forward to its level design. Its level design to me, now this is such a ridiculous critique firstly, but the level design in Black Myth Wukong is not linear. But even if it was, why is this a problem? There are plenty of linear games that are good. God of War, Uncharted, Devil May Cry, just to name a few linear level design. It is not a flaw, but rather the choice of the developers now, of course. You can have linear games with bad level design, but neither of those things apply to Black Myth Wukong. Of course, there are going to be linear segments in the game, but this is the case with almost every game. The levels in Black Myth Wukong are structured as follows. There are 6 different maps, each corresponding to a chapter, all of which you can travel back and forth to within each map. There are multiple branches, pathways that lead to different areas. A lot of these areas are entirely optional and contain a plethora of secrets for you to uncover. The optional areas are always worth exploring as they reward you with rare materials, bosses and side quests. Another thing I like about the level design is that it encourages backtracking to previous areas, as you will often make new discoveries after meeting certain requirements. To be clear though, I'm not seeing the level design is without issue. There are many areas where they could improve on. However, it is not fair to simply dismiss the level design as linear or use it as a significant point of criticism. It's funny that the same people who claim the level design to be linear also complain that there is no map. Just think about what you are saying. If the game was truly linear, where would you go from point A to point B? Why would you ever need a map? I don't want to name names, but if you have been following this game, I'm sure you know who I'm referring to. Anyway, that's enough of that. You really don't need a map. If you are able to navigate games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne or Sekiro, you won't have any problems with Black Myth Wukong. Going forward, I would like to see game science make their maps more interconnected, increase the complexity of the pathways and perhaps make better use of shortcuts, instead of solely relying on more shrines. All in all, the level design is good, but it's still far from reaching the level of From Software. Another complaint I see is that the game is just one big boss rush, and all you do is go from one boss to the next, which is such a silly thing to say. Firstly, bosses are the best part of every action combat game, so I don't know what you are complaining about. But also, these are most likely the people that just run through the whole level, missing out on so much of the game's content. Black Myth Wukong has 20 different side quests, each of varying length, and each chapter has entire secret locations hidden within them that expand the lore and provide additional story. Expositioning, keep in mind, this is not a From Ubisoft game, okay? Bloated with endless mundane side content, but the side content that is present is high quality and enough to satiate your desire for something other than bosses. While we're on the topic of pointless nitpicks, let's briefly address the complaint of the game's invisible walls. Does Black Myth Wukong, like every other game in existence, have invisible walls? Yes. Could they have possibly hidden the walls a bit better? Yes. Does this affect the game in any meaningful way at all? No.